We are following a shocking twist in a murder mystery that is still unsolved. The big question is, who shot this mom and her 2 children dead inside their mansion in rural Arkansas a day after a very emotional final divorce hearing? Investigators are still trying to figure that out, but let's get to the major discovery that was just made in a very interesting place. These personal items belonging to the mom, Charity Beallis, they were found in a dumpster a half hour away from the murder scene just a couple days after she and the kids were found dead, including pictures and this necklace. We just received those pictures from Charity's family. I'll tell you what they told me about what this could mean for the case. We're on the case, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Stewart. Hey guys, real quick before we start this story, I want to talk about one of the big sponsors around the case, one of the most watched shows on YouTube, Morgan & Morgan, America's largest personal injury law firm. They're a firm with more than 1,000 attorneys who have recovered $25 billion from more than 500,000 clients. And in the past few months alone, a client in Florida received $12 million when insurance offered just $350,000. In Pennsylvania, another client was awarded $26 million. That's 40 times the insurer's offer. Morgan & Morgan makes it easy to fight for what you deserve. You can even start a claim from your phone. So if you're injured, you can start a claim at forthepeople.com/OTC. You can also click the link below or scan the QR code on your screen. Well, let's get to this major update. Truly a twist in the story we're talking about today. A discovery reportedly made not by police, but by a dumpster diver. We're talking about someone who goes into the trash and finds items that people have discarded. And the items we're talking about today could be incredibly important in understanding what happened to Charity Beallis, her son, and her daughter. Now, these items were found in a trash bag at a dumpster at an apartment complex about 20 minutes away from where Charity and the 2 children were found dead on December 3rd. The items are found in a trash bag, and they include pictures of Charity and members of her family, pictures with her husband who she was divorcing at the time of her death. But there's also this necklace that could be a very critical piece of evidence. I got these pictures from Charity's son, who was given them by this dumpster diver who also went to law enforcement. They tell me that the detectives on this case, they are aware of this discovery, though they haven't confirmed it publicly. The necklace has the names of her children on it. Now, that's not the only twist related to this find, because there is some very interesting significance to the address where these items were found. And I'll tell you about that in just a moment. But let's lay out what we know to this point. The mom we're talking about is named Charity Beallis. This is a picture of Charity with her 2 children who were found dead inside of their home in Bonanza, Arkansas, a small town outside Fort Smith, Arkansas. Both kids roughly 6 years old. They lived in Bonanza. This is a town that's right along the Oklahoma border, population 575, small, close-knit community. And Charity lived in, for this town, pretty big house. 4-bedroom home. It's down this rural, secluded road. Zillow says the house is worth roughly $800,000, which is nearly 4 times the amount of the average home price in Bonanza, Arkansas. Now, Charity's life, though, did not appear to have been easy in the months leading up to her death. Her family told me that she was scared. She was going through a divorce after a toxic marriage. But everything changed. Police say on December 3rd, they were called to Charity's home. It was around 9:30 in the morning. Charity's estranged husband was not living in the house. We'll have much more on him in just a moment. He wasn't living there because of a no-contact order that Charity had against him related to a domestic abuse case. The call was for a welfare check. No one had seen Charity or the kids. The Sebastian County Sheriff's Office says that 2 workers allowed them to get into the home, and that's when they made a terrible discovery. Charity was dead, as well as her 2 6-year-old children. All 3 of them had been shot. It is unclear if deputies believe that those gunshots were fired by someone who was coming into the home, or perhaps was it Charity who had harmed herself and harmed the kids after this terrible divorce situation that had been going on. Deputies say right now the Arkansas Crime Lab is working to determine those details, but they haven't said a lot publicly. Now, I have been in touch with Charity's son. His name's John Powell, as well as Charity's dad, Randy Powell. I actually interviewed them a couple of weeks ago, and I asked them what they had heard from investigators to that point, and they told me not much. They say that they actually found out about Charity's death on Facebook. But Charity's dad says he believes he knows an important detail about how his daughter's body was found. Listen to this. What have they told you about, and I know this is really difficult to talk about, and you probably didn't think a couple weeks ago that you'd be doing interviews like this, but what did they tell you about how Charity and the two kids were found in the home?
Nothing.
They haven't let us know anything about no details or nothing.
They told us nothing.
We found out that they were dead through Facebook, through people messaging us.
I found out from a sheriff of another county that I went to high school with. He called the coroner, and the coroner had him to tell me that the babies were shot through the chest and my daughter was shot through the chest and through the head.
Now, the Sebastian County Sheriff's Office is running this investigation, but in another bizarre, certainly intriguing development in this case is that the federal government is also involved, specifically the Department of Homeland Security and the Secret Service. Local deputies say that they're following up on countless tips, and they've also been processing search warrants. In fact, 12 search warrants have been processed, and more may be put in as this investigation is continuing. They haven't confirmed details that Charity's dad talked about when he said that she was found with 2 gunshot wounds. Deputies say they are waiting for autopsy results to come back, as well as test results related to the evidence that's been collected. What was Charity like for people who are just starting to see and hear about this story? I mean, we've heard a lot about the divorce that she went through and being the victim of domestic violence. What do you want people to know about her?
She was very loving. She loved everybody. No matter color, race, whether they were rich or poor, she loved everybody. Was a great mother and give all her love and time and compassion to those children. And she spent the last 9 months trying to save their lives. And nobody in Sebastian County would listen and do anything. There's stuff on her Facebook page where she wrote letters where the prosecuting attorney wouldn't even accept her letters from her or talk to her or anything. You can search her Facebook page and find that.
A key part of this story is the timing of when Charity and the kids were found dead on December 3rd. It was a day after Charity had a final court hearing related to her divorce from a man named Randall Beallis. He's a doctor, and he is the dad to the 2 children who were found dead. Through his attorney, he has said that he's had nothing to do with the deaths of his 2 children as well as his estranged wife. He is not a suspect, and he has not been arrested or charged in relation to these tragic deaths. And we don't know if police believe that someone came into the home to kill Charity and the kids. And again, police haven't said whether there are any suspects in this case to this point. But it was on December 2nd that there was this final hearing for the divorce between Charity and Dr. Randall Beallis. Charity's family says that a judge at that hearing ruled that she was going to have to split time with her estranged husband when it came to the kids. Court documents say that they would sell their physical assets and the money would be split. But as a reminder, police have not said anything about the manner of deaths here. Now, another important piece of context in talking about the divorce is that Randy Beallis pleaded guilty in October of this year in connection to a case where he was accused of strangling Charity in front of their kids in February. She filed for divorce shortly thereafter. I did have to ask Charity's family a difficult question about a theory that's been put out there, speculated that whether this was a case that is actually the result of a possible murder-suicide following a difficult decision in divorce court the day prior involving the custody of the kids. And this is what they said about that. The next question is not an easy one to ask, but since law enforcement haven't released any information, we know that she had a tough ruling in a custody situation on the day before that she was found. And it's been speculated by some that she might have done this to the young kids and then took her own life. Is there any possibility that could be what happened? Or do you believe that someone came into this house and did this to Charity and the two young kids?
There's no way, God's green earth, that she did that to herself and those children. There is no way. They would like Randy Beallis and all the people that's got their pockets full of his money would like us to believe that. There's no way that happened. They got joint custody in the divorce case. I was there. She knew that it was going to be tough times, and she also knew that it would be around the time that the court was finished, that something that they might lose their lives. The judge actually didn't want me even around them, so I wasn't even allowed to protect my family.
Even after Randall Beallis pled guilty to choking my mother in front of the children, I mean, he pled guilty to those charges.
Sure did.
And they still granted joint custody.
That was because it was in October he pleads guilty, after this horrific, I've read the police report. I mean, it's just horrific what he was accused of doing. And then he pleads guilty in October. I saw his attorney said that he was going to get 2 weeks with the kids and then she would get 1 week with the kids.
Was a temporary basis. So the judge said he needed to catch up on the 9 months that he'd missed seeing them.
Randall Beallis pleaded guilty to domestic battery in the 3rd degree on October 6th of this year. He received a suspended sentence and he was fined $1,500. He was ordered to have no contact with Charity, and he could only have contact with their children with court approval. We don't know what role, if any, Charity's divorce and history of being the victim of domestic violence played into whatever happened inside that home. I did reach out to Dr. Beallis' attorney and I asked just what his response is to any accusation or speculation that his client had something to do with the deaths of his children and his estranged wife. Here's what Dr. Beallis' attorney said, quote, "I represent Dr. Randall Beallis. Mr. Beallis has been cooperative with law enforcement and fully supports the Sebastian County Sheriff's Office investigation. We hope that the Sheriff's Office finds the truth about what happened to Mrs. Charity Beallis and their children. Mr. Beallis was not responsible for the death of Mrs. Beallis nor his children's deaths. Mr. and Mrs. Beallis had a full-day court hearing on Tuesday, December 2nd, 2025. Mr. Randall Beallis was awarded joint custody. Decision-making for the children's school and medical needs, and his children were set to be with him on a schedule of 2 weeks with Mr. Beallis and 1 week with Mrs. Beallis. At some time on or around December 3rd, 2025, the tragic event occurred before Mr. Beallis was able to receive his children back from their mother. The Beallis children were not brought to the hearing by Mrs. Beallis, and she was ordered to provide them to Mr. Randall Beallis on Friday, December 5th, 2025. He is now heartbroken that the return of his children was taken away from him. Mr. Beallis has given a voluntary interview and has allowed access to anything requested by the Sebastian County Sheriff's Office in their investigation. Mrs. Beallis has made false accusations against Mr. Beallis in the past. Evidence of these prior false accusations can be found in her book she published. It's titled A Lifetime of Miracles, Transformation Through Tragedy by Charity Beallis. I personally have a copy of this book in my possession." End quote. What was your mom's, how did she and Dr. Beallis come to be? That they were in a relationship and then got married? I mean, what was kind of the story of their relationship?
She was a nurse at the hospital, Mercy Hospital, and she told me herself that he flirted with her and even pinched her on the butt and done some other moves that she thought about filing the sexual harassment charges. But then he smooth talked her however he done it, and she started feeling sorry for him because he whined and cried that his wife had committed suicide, and she felt sorry for him and thought that she would try to console him, and it ended up a short time after that, they were in Mexico being married. Very short time afterwards.
Charity and Dr. Beallis were actually married to each other twice. Court records show that they divorced in 2012. They then got married again in 2015, then went on to have the 2 children who were killed inside the home. Now, Dr. Randy Beallis was also married more than just those 2 times to Charity Beallis. I want to show you this picture here of a woman named Shauna Beallis. She died in 2012 at the age of 34. Now, there are various outlets reporting that she took her own life with a gun. Dr. Beallis was never charged in that case. Police reportedly ruled the death a suicide. Now, we did find her obituary that describes her as someone who had fun living life, and it lists Dr. Randy Beallis as one of the people that she was survived by. According to her family, Charity spent the past 9 months living in fear after being the victim of domestic violence. Arkansas State Senator Terry Rice told 5 News in Arkansas that Charity had reached out to get help for protection earlier this year.
She talked to state senators, tried to get a hold of governors.
She wrote letters to the governors, senators, attorney general, everybody else, and sent them all the paperwork that she had up to that date, the conviction, everything. Some tried to help, but we don't know exactly who.
Her family says that Charity had a goal of becoming a victim's advocate for other women who have been impacted by domestic violence, but now she won't get the chance to do that. It does appear that Charity's relationship that led to her divorce, it was toxic, to say the least.
Give me your phone. I'm shutting it off.
Here comes the next one. Yeah. What are you gonna do? I'll be in the parent, buddy. My truck in my name. Yep. I paid for it.
Yep. Give me that phone.
This is a video clip that has since gone viral on Facebook. It was originally posted in 2020, and it shows reportedly Charity and Dr. Beallis in a confrontation with a man named Lonnie Mitz on Facebook. The poster writes, quote, "This is Dr. Randall Scott Beallis and his wife Charity disciplining her son for not returning a text as soon as they thought he should. They appear in court in the morning to decide custody of the 17-year-old and the 2 babies seen in the video. Please share this, as those 2 shouldn't be in charge of a pet, much less children." Now, on May 20th, not long after that video was posted, John Powell, the man who we spoke with, Charity's son, filed an emancipation document asking that he get the rights of an adult. He was slated to turn 18 just a few months after this incident. In the request, he writes, quote, that on the 14th day of May 2020, that Charity Beallis and Randy Beallis did take a knife or ice pick and slashed and ruined the tires of John Randall Powell's 2005 Ford F-150 vehicle, that he bought the vehicle, and the same is titled in his name. That John Randall Powell has a video of Charity Beallis and Randy Beallis doing the same, end quote. John, I know there's a video that's been going around the internet showing a interaction where I believe it shows Dr. Beallis and he has like an ice pick or something going into a Ford like F-150's tire. What happened there?
So I was living with him at the time, and me as well as my mother were pretty scared for our lives, because he's very controlling and abusive. He would persuade her and tell her every move to make and everything to do when he would get mad about anything. So he pretty much made her go to stab the first tire, and she couldn't do that. And then that's when you see him come right after behind her with another knife and taunt me with it and go to stabbing my tires over something that wasn't even a big deal, just because he got mad and was just being controlling and trying to prove his point, I guess, that he's in control and nobody can stop him.
Randy, when you were at the custody hearing on Tuesday, just what stood out to you about Dr. Beallis at that hearing and the way that he acted?
Everything. Hatred for my daughter and my family.
Randy Beallis has not been named in connection to the death of Charity Beallis, and he hasn't even been named as a person of interest by police, and police have not said if the death is suspicious. But we do know that Randy is an admitted domestic abuser involved in a brutal divorce. Those are just the facts of this case. Now, the day after Charity and the kids' bodies were found, Beallis' attorney filed a motion to dismiss the divorce proceedings. Then, an attorney for John Powell filed a motion to intervene, asking the court to undo the dismissal of the divorce to allow him to become the administrator of Charity's estate. Dr. Beallis' attorney filed a response denying that the divorce dismissal be undone, saying, quote, if a party dies after the divorce hearing hearing, but before the written decree is entered, the divorce proceeding generally terminates and the surviving spouse is considered a widow or widower, not a divorcee. The court loses jurisdiction over the marriage and related property matters because legally there is no longer a marriage to dissolve. According to Charity's son's attorney, along with the custody of the children being determined at the December 2nd hearing, when it came to assets between Charity and Dr. Beallis, they agreed to the sale of real property and each party to keep their own vehicle. Now, I am bringing up these family issues that go back years because it does paint the picture and the backdrop for what was going on at the time that Charity and the kids were found dead. So with all of that, I want to get into the twist on top of kind of the shock of finding all these items in the trash at an apartment complex in Fort Smith. But there's one part of it that we were not expecting, because on December 6th, this is 3 days after Charity and the kids were found dead, these personal belongings were found in a dumpster at an apartment complex in Fort Smith, Arkansas. It's about 20 minutes from Bonanza. KNWA-TV was the first to report this, that the dumpster diver finds this black trash bag, and in it were these pictures of Charity and the kids, even a picture of Charity and Dr. Beallis. And there was also a necklace with the names of the Beallis kids on it, and it looks like a woman's necklace, and there's also a receipt that had Charity's address in Bonanza on it. This is the apartment complex where those items were found. It's called the Reserve. It's the same address as the one Dr. Randall Beallis listed as his address when he was arrested in the domestic violence case in February of this year. KNWA-TV says that law enforcement would not confirm the discovery of these items, and they have yet to give any information on a suspect in this case. Joining us now to talk more about this case is Dr. Ken Lang, retired homicide detective and associate professor of criminology at Milligan University. Thank you for taking the time to be with us here on Law and Crime. This discovery reportedly, through the family, that these items were found by a dumpster diver in Fort Smith, Arkansas. Just what's your reaction to that? What could that mean for this case?
I think this is important. These items that they're finding are photographs, pictures, this necklace. I think the necklace is of significance in this case, particularly considering, Charity was a mother. It's a necklace with her children's name on it. This could have been a Mother's Day gift in the past. This is something that she would have adored, would have enjoyed wearing around her neck. And as an investigator, one of the first thoughts that came to mind is how frequently did she wear that necklace around her neck? Could that necklace have been present at the scene when she was killed and then taken at that time and then discarded later? As a former homicide detective, when I heard about the necklace particularly, that became of interest to me, because then we want to start looking for, is there any DNA related to the crime itself, right? So she was shot, and as a result of that, you may or you may not have biological evidence that transfers onto this necklace. And if you can show that, that the necklace is there, and then, then it's gone, that becomes significant in the case.
Imagine too, at an apartment complex, that there's probably surveillance video around the dumpster. What is that moment like where you get this phone? And I will say the Sebastian County Sheriff's Office, they have not confirmed or denied any of this, but John Powell, who's the son, says that this is what was found, and that it's been relayed to authorities. But what's that moment like? You get that phone call and you realize that these items are there.
So as an investigator, that's a great moment, particularly in a case where you're looking at a red bull. You're not sure you have a suspect maybe, but you don't have evidence to pull things together, and then you start. It leaves you wondering: are you on the right track? Am I looking in the wrong direction? This is why I'm not seeing what I need to see. And then all of a sudden you get that phone call, and you get a piece of information that starts putting you onto that trail that maybe perhaps this is the direction. For an investigator, there's a lot of euphoria there with that, and I think that it gives the case momentum, which becomes very important in any case, particularly once those 48 hours are golden hours, and once they're gone, the case begins to die. You get new cases in. You have to continue working the new cases while trying to work through the older cases. But if you put enough people on the case and enough time into it, you can push it through.
You go back to the day, early December, what a horrific discovery. Charity Beallis, these two young children found shot inside the home. We don't really know details about their injuries, where the gunshots were. Certainly there was a lot of emotion going on with the end of a marriage and what had been a very toxic situation for a long time. For the investigators that are showing up and you're trying to figure out, was this someone who came into the home and did this? Sadly, could this have been a murder-suicide situation? What are some of the things you're looking for that can tell you what really happened?
Well, if we're looking at a possible intruder into the home, one of the first things we're looking for is forced entry. Again, we just mentioned about surveillance around apartment complexes and in neighborhoods and in houses and stuff like that. We're going to look for that kind of information, see if anything's suspicious. But I mean, this is really strange that the day after they settle the divorce, she and the children are found shot dead, right? And so that becomes a flag. Could it be circumstantial? Yeah, absolutely. But then when you start adding different circumstantial evidence upon other circumstantial evidence, and then red flags start going off in investigators' heads, and you start looking in the direction of that person. And so you begin to focus on that. So with that, you're looking, in this case, we have use of a firearm, so we have ballistics. Does Randall have a firearm registered to him? Does the caliber match the caliber that was used at the scene? Is there already information on file in the system with the registered handguns? Many states have these situations where you purchase a handgun and they have already test fired and have on file a round from that weapon in the IBIS system. So if you use a weapon in a crime, they could match any found ballistics at the scene to that. So we're looking at those kinds of things. Then, I mean, also with ballistics, you're looking at the proximity of the shots, because if the shots are close to the victim at the time when the firearm is discharged, it leaves different types of stippling and other evidence than it would if it was shot at a distance. And then the whole trajectories and things like that can give you an idea of how things unfolded in the house when the shots were fired. So those are some immediate things that we're going to look at. Or you're going to look for any other physical evidence, and this will come out at autopsy. And was there physical assault, was there physical injury, was there bruising and all that might appear to be fresh, defensive wounds, things of such, and we would look for those in the autopsy as well, and then take that information and run with it.
For it to, and there's so many different things that you look at a moment like that. For those of us who are not, police officers or investigators, I mean, how difficult is it to know whether a gunshot wound was self-inflicted or if it was something that was done by somebody else?
It's not as easy.
Probably an unfair question.
No, it's not at all. It's just not as easy as some people would suspect. There are some indicators to show if a gunshot wound is self-inflicted. So, for example, and these items don't necessarily always appear in suicides, and so you have to look for them, evaluate what you have, and then discern and make a determination to move on from there. So, for example, for people who shoot themselves in the head, because death is instantaneous, if the trigger has a pattern on it, often that pattern will transfer into the index finger that was used to fire the weapon. And so, because you don't have the capillary refill happening as a result of the instantaneous death. And so you can see that. Sometimes you have back blow, and so you'll have a little bit of biological matter that'll come back towards the gun, and it'll land on the gun or even on the finger, the trigger finger or part of the hand But then again, that doesn't always present itself. And then the gun itself, if it's pressed up against the head, it's pressed really hard, it'll create what's called a stamping effect, where you can see the outline of the muzzle of the gun. As opposed to if you just lay the gun to the side of your head when you discharge it, then you're going to have more of a stippling effect. And so there's these little nuanced things that we do look for. I mean, but that's not to say that in that case that somebody couldn't have pressed the gun hard to someone else's head. You're still going to have that same physiological effect from that.
Dr. Randall Beallis is the estranged husband. His attorney has said that he had nothing to do with this, that he is innocent. How do you go about ruling someone out? I mean, clearly they had a history of domestic violence. This was a toxic marriage, to say the least. They were involved in a very emotional day, the day prior to her dying. I can see why investigators, certainly her family, would say, we need to at least look at this person. How do you go about ruling that person out, where here we are almost a month later and we really haven't heard anything from law enforcement about whether they've ruled anyone out in connection to this?
Well, the first thing we're going to do is interview that person and see if they're even willing to talk. And if they're not, that could be an indicator of some issues. If they have a valid alibi, they're going to want to talk. They're going to want to tell you what that alibi is, and then you begin pursuing that alibi. But then in this day and age of technology and what we have, we can pursue a variety of avenues to verify these alibis. And so, for example, let's say the cell phones are a huge factor anymore today. We can dump the cell phone, get a search warrant for that data in no time, and start combing through GPS coordinate information at different dates and times. We're then going to try to correlate that to an estimated time of death from the medical examiner's office, because the rigor mortis is going to be able to give the medical examiner an idea of about when, at least a time frame, when death occurred. And so from that, then we can look at cell phone information. We can also look at the Charity cell phone information. Was there any contact going on between them since the court date and whatnot like that? And so was there any information there that would indicate that maybe that would have either agitated or, but when his phone is receiving this, where is it geographically located at? What tower is it hitting off of? What GPS coordinates does it have? And so this is information that we can initially look at, along with speaking with others and verifying the whereabouts of different people and doing things as we did in the days before technology became as prevalent as it has.
As a member of the media, we always want an answer very quickly, and I know that that's not how this works, but. In this case, I mean, she dies December 3rd. It's almost the new year at the time that we're recording this. And at the time we're recording this, there's no arrest and law enforcement hasn't said anything. What do you make of just that timeline and whether we should read into any of it, knowing that as of right now, they haven't said a word really beyond the fact that they're investigating and just following up on tips and search warrants?
A case like this, especially any murder case, we as investigators do try to keep tight-lipped about what we have and what we don't have. And certainly there's a lot of circumstantial evidence that's come out through the media that makes one raise an eyebrow to. But as investigators, we are looking for that physical evidence that is going to put us beyond probable cause into that situation where we want proof beyond a reasonable doubt in this situation. Because what we don't want to do is make an arrest and still have a ton of ambiguity left in the case that gives reasonable doubt, particularly one that has been in the media and has gotten some notoriety. And so with that, we're going to work hard towards finding the physical evidence. And that is time consuming. I mean, just getting data from carriers can take anywhere up to 90 days to get that information. Then you have to comb through it and make sense out of what you're seeing and put your suspect in or out. And then if you put him out, then you're back on a cold trail and you're starting back at point one.
Yeah, and we'll see. I mean, there's a lot to go through in this case. Very tragic story with the loss of these children as well as the loss of Charity Beallis. And we'll see what the investigation finds. Dr. Ken Lang, retired homicide detective, thank you for taking the time to be with us on Law and Crime. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on, and Happy New Year.
Now, we are waiting on more information from the Sebastian County Sheriff's Office, and at this time, we don't know what they believe happened inside the home. No one's been arrested. No one's been considered a suspect publicly in connection to Charity's death and the deaths of the children. And we don't even know the manner of death or whether law enforcement officially considers it suspicious. Those search warrants are being filed. Interviews are being done. And again, the U.S. Secret Service, Arkansas State Police, and the Department of Homeland Security are all assisting in this case. Results of an autopsy have not been released, and Dr. Charity Beallis, through his attorney, has stated that he had nothing to do with the deaths. It's unclear if domestic violence in any way had an impact on what happened to Charity and these kids, whether the divorce had anything to do with their deaths. Now, as I finished my interview with John and Randy, I did ask them about the two people in this case who should receive the most attention. We're talking about the young boy and the young girl, the 6-year-old twins, found dead alongside their mom inside the house. What do you want people to know about them?
That they were very smart and very, very precious and innocent. I mean, the little boy learned how to play chess in 45 minutes, and the girl at 6 years old could draw and paint pictures like a professional.
And they were very, very loving of other people and so pleasant, had a real bright light to shine. And we went to their church Sunday. They invited us up there, and they were loved by all. The whole congregation was just beside herself in tears and mourning over them and the children. The children were as bright and as precious as any I've ever seen in my life.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.